So basically, what I'm covering for my rhetoric is gonna be the console wars. Now, the video game console wars, just to give a kind of idea of what it is. It's not enough. It's not a real thing. It's more of a fan base thing. The console wars itself is basically who has the better video game console. You have the competitors between Xbox, PlayStation, or Nintendo. Realistically speaking, Nintendo always is king, reigns king. So Xbox and PlayStation always runs. They're always in the running for second place, pretty much. Now, the reason why I chose this for the rhetoric is because the rhetoric they choose and use to sell you on something. Remember, they're persuading you to buy their item over the other, but in the process, it's very nuanced because they actually don't want to throw their competitors under the bus. It's kind of being the honorable opponent. The best way I can explain it is, let's say, it's like playing a game of chess. So you shake hands, you have respect for one another in the process. May the best man win. So that's pretty much what it is. Now, the rhetoric that they choose to use is never actually saying the other person is worse or not as good as our product. They tend to do things like sign game exclusives. So basically, what that means is, let's say it'd be a multi platform video game release, but Sony, being PlayStation, or Microsoft, being Xbox, will actually say, "Hey, if you play it on ours, we'll give you, excuse me, we'll give you an extra level that the other game doesn't have just for playing on our platform." It's the small things like that. You know, as of right now, maybe about a day ago, right now, Sony actually played that card. There is a game coming out called Marvel's Avengers by Square Enix and and Sony. Now, Sony has a publishing deal with Marvel to like exclusively release the Spider-Man character for whatever medium on Sony platforms. With that being said, Spider-Man, the character, will only be playable through the Marvel's Avengers through the PlayStation only. So the rhetoric there is basically saying, "Hey, we're better because we have characters that you really want to use." That's what they're doing in the sense of not necessarily persuading directly, but basically they're buying you based off the extra stuff they make it seem like they're going to be giving you. I mean, the Xbox side of that argument, they're sincerely like upset about it. It is kind of weird because the Xbox has been lately trying to push the notion of we're better because we're trying to let you play all of our games, Xbox first party games, on your Android phone, your Google Pixel, and everything except the Apple right now. They do have a program called xCloud, which is basically letting you stream phones through the cloud. How that technology works, I'm still kind of lost on. But as you can see, it's literally saying we're better than you, and this is how we're better. So come buy our product instead of theirs. Now, all of the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, that was no contest. The PlayStation 4 across the board won. When it first launched, it was the stronger system. It does have the better games. Unfortunately, it is. It does have the better games. I'm an Xbox person myself, and Xbox just kept trying to keep up for the rest of that game. For that generation of consoles. Sorry. And now, what Xbox is banking on is they saw all of their mistakes with the Xbox One, and now they're doing with the most high-end console ever been on the market. Granted, every time a new console comes out on the market, it's stronger than previous generations, right? So that's kind of like a shoe-in selling point. That's their rhetoric. The rhetoric that they use is selling points. That's what they use. So the Xbox that will be releasing later this holiday, don't even know how that's gonna work considering this COVID situation. It's actually 1.5 times stronger than the PlayStation, the new PlayStation that's going to be released. Now, that is what Xbox is using as a selling point, while PlayStation is saying, well, they might have a stronger system, but we have more games. And to their point, yes, they do. Ultimately, Xbox is still trying to say, well, what's the point of having such games if they don't look as good as they could look unless you play it on our system? So they kind of ignore each other on their winning arguments. So more games, PlayStation wins that. Xbox will completely disregard it. Uh, Xbox has a stronger system. PlayStation will completely disregard it. They stick to their strengths, and their strengths is exactly the rhetoric that they're trying to use. Some people get won over by the games themselves. It's like, oh, PlayStation has the games, so that's gonna be enough to be like, they've convinced me to go with them, or Xbox saying, I have the stronger system. It's like that's enough for some people to actually go towards them. Um, so that's pretty much the rhetoric that they choose to use. It is an interesting thing. It goes back to knowing your audience, what exactly is going to be a selling point, what has worked before, and how they can actually keep reiterating that without the message getting old or redundant. It's a very interesting thing, and actually an avid researcher on video game business. It's such an interesting thing to me, how the highs and lows of the video game industry and so forth. But you tend to start noticing these trends. It's the words exclusive, price range, power, graphics, and ultimately accessibility. That's actually a very big deal because the price range will dictate how accessible it is to people, and even sometimes if the price is a bit too high, how easy it is for people to maneuver it will outweigh the price range. Again, in the business of marketing, I guess the convincing rhetoric is always based on selling points. And if you actually ever go into any kind of game store, even a Walmart or a Best Buy, if you will, look at all of their marketing. It says best controllers, and then basically every controller will actually have the same style or the same technology, if you will, but the Xbox will market more about how the grips are easier to handle, and the PlayStation will market more about how the triggers are more responsive, if you will. And realistically speaking, it's literally the same technology, it's the same manufacturers, so that's kind of the insane part. But they're just trying to win over their fan base and win over more people to their side of things. And that's what I'm covering regarding the rhetoric itself. Um, any other questions? Before anything else, I would like to add I was a manager for a GameStop for 3 years. I feel like I may understand this pretty well. I did cover the profit and the loss. These console wars tend to be won by simply as put, doesn't matter how many games one system has or how strong the other one is, it comes down to the money. Whoever has sold more systems for that generation is the winner for that war or that battle, if you will, because it's a never ending thing. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up my short essay regarding the rhetoric in video game console wars. As for me, I'm an Xbox person.